Hey everybody, it's Steve. Just wanted to record a quick pre-Thanksgiving message. I hope everybody has a good break. And what I want to do in this message and in this post, because there's stuff below here, is share some stuff about social media I've thought about in light of the election and other things going on. But also, first, I want to start by just updating everybody on where we're at in the class. So, if you look at the schedule, you'll see that due this week is the second part of the Code Academy exercises and the debriefing posted. So, on your 444 WordPress portfolio, there should be a new page on there where you recap what your experience was with Code Academy generally. Remember the HTML and CSS stuff we did earlier, but also what your experience was like trying to try one of these exercises on your own. As I've said all along, you don't need to post examples of the work. And honestly, you don't even necessarily need to finish doing the second part of the Code Academy thing. What I want you to write about and reflect about is what is that experience like trying to teach yourself how to do some of these coding things, following instructions online, because I'm completely convinced that there are some basic things that you need to learn how to do to write for the web. And that's why we worked with the HTML and the CSS. But beyond the sort of HTML and CSS basics, beyond the sort of like foundation, I think that part of what it means to write for the web in an ongoing fashion is to always being able and willing to learn new techniques and software and coding and things like that, and not being afraid of it just because you see yourself as some kind of writer or English major that doesn't deal with computer stuff. It's important to sort of wade into that. So that's what that experience is about, and I'm hoping that you're reflecting on that. I am also, as we speak, commenting on your, as I speak and you watch me speak, commenting on your semester social media final update. You will hopefully have my thoughts on this before the Thanksgiving break commences, hopefully even by the end of the day today. I'm recording this on a Tuesday. The important part about the social media project, which will be due, we'll start doing peer review on it on the Monday after winter break, or I'm sorry, after Thanksgiving break. The important part of that is that these updates have been basically just sort of encapsulations, just sort of reflections on how things have gone so far. So it's just been just kind of like, well, this happened, then that happened, the other thing happened on whatever social media that you're involved in. The essay that you write is hopefully a little bit more reflective. Hopefully it's a little bit more, now that I've done all this stuff for these different social media platforms, what does it all mean, right? What sort of argument or point or observation can you make? And think about this in relationship to some of the things that we've read about how Firefly piece is a little bit off the beaten path, but in terms of how all those kinds of fan groups can network with each other in these social media platforms. The Bruce Springsteen site is kind of interesting in the sense of like how Twitter ends up being this space that can work in a real time and real place, like at a Bruce Springsteen concert, or in an ongoing discussion about a particular topic. The Pinterest piece is interesting in the sense of how does something like social media shape our perceptions of ourselves in relationship to what we're trying to do in our day-to-day lives. Can we live up to the images that we see on something like Pinterest? There's a ton of essays like that, and below what I'm sharing is a bunch of different links that if the election had been held in August or October, we certainly would be reading these and talking about these, because there's all this sort of stuff that's come out as a result of the election regarding how the different candidates, in particular Trump, use things like Twitter. There's all this stuff about how sites like Facebook actually sort of perpetuated fake news about both candidates, but particularly fake news about Clinton that was more persuasive to Trump voters potentially, about what the role is of social media sort of siloing us into different sorts of viewpoints where it becomes difficult for us to make connections to people who might feel differently. So if your Facebook feed is anything like mine, for example, you basically are following a group who are politically and socially like-minded people, and that creates this sort of effect of like of just shock that anybody would feel differently than you, and things like that. And I have to say, after this election, I have always had a sort of very optimistic view of the role of things like social media in social discourse. I'm a little less optimistic about it now. So that's what a bunch of those links are about, like there too. Okay. One last thing, and I'm meeting with potentially people today at 5 o'clock at Sweetwater's to help through some of these issues. But one of the other things that you need to be kind of working on over the break and certainly before the end of the semester is firming up what your Writing 444 portfolio looks like. And this is important because a number of you have portfolios right now where you've got a website going, but it's not very well organized in terms of where stuff is put and some of the what needs to be there. Okay, so let me walk you through with this video here my example and why this is what I'm looking for and the sort of things you should be aiming to do with your website too. Okay, all right. So this is the website that I have linked on the class webpage. So we have Krause444portfolio.wordpress.com. I am not saying that your website has to look exactly like this by any stretch of the imagination, but I want to point out a couple of characteristics that I think you should be striving for with your site. First off, I think this is a very clean and simple design. It doesn't have a lot of frilly stuff. It presents itself as sort of professional, and I think that you should be striving for that sort of thing as well. You'll notice that it has a picture of me, and there's a couple of people, for example, who have had pictures where it's them along with somebody else, and that gets kind of confusing because how are we supposed to know who's who in that image? You'll notice that it has some details about who I am, like a little biography thing here, right, about this, and a little bit of explanation about what it is that we're looking at here, right? Your explanation may vary from mine, of course, because your purposes may be a little bit different from mine, okay? You'll also notice I have some links to things, okay? Things that are associated with me, the Department of English, EMU, stuff like that. The website for the class, things like that are interesting like that. And then when it comes to how the exercises are organized, you'll see that they're all under these tabs at the top, right? So like this is where I would have this. I have this drop down menu here for social media, 1, 2, 3, and at the same time, if I click on this is where I would probably have my essay. I have the same sort of thing in terms of the usability project, although here I should probably have some drop-down menus as well to separate this stuff out, okay? A lot of people just right now have a bunch of links of stuff that run across the top here. They'll have all the exercises as separate links. Don't do that. You should have it as menus that drop down or that are organized in some fashion. Maybe you want a calendar, maybe you don't. Maybe you want some others. Maybe you want your Twitter feed over here, maybe you don't. These things that go in this column over here are the widgets that you see in terms of the layout for your website, okay? But anyways, this is what I'm getting at. This sort of put together something somebody looks at it on the web and says, oh, that person knows how to use WordPress. They've worked with this a little bit. Okay, that's what we're aiming for. Okay, so working with some of the technicalities of WordPress, this is the reason why I'm offering to get together with people at 5 o'clock today at Sweetwater's, and I'm also happy to meet with people in my office when they have, we can set up time or we can do something with Google Hangouts or things like that. The best resource for sure on using WordPress, though, is the support forum, which I've linked to before. You can look up almost anything in terms of how to do it. And again, I'm not looking for anything super sophisticated with how you understand this, but it seems to me that given that the nature of the class is called Writing for the World Wide Web, and given that most of the writing on the web nowadays takes place within content management systems like WordPress, it seems to me that one of the things that you really need to be able to demonstrate by the end of this class is some familiarity with how to use WordPress. And so that's what we're up to about here. I think that's about it for now. Be sure to, like I said, look at all the links below. Be sure to also think in terms of the calendar of upcoming events. Remember, we're going to start peer review on your essay about the social media experience semester right after break. We're also going to, shortly after break, start talking about peer review for the final version of the text-to-hypertext project, the thing that you've been working on really for weeks now in terms of doing some prototype testing with somebody, hopefully making that into a website and things like that. So a lot of stuff is coming due after the break. So the good thing is that we're done with various readings, although, like I said, I wish we had time to talk about the readings that are below. The bad news is there's lots of stuff that we have to write up and think about at the end. Okay, like I said, have a good holiday, and as always, I'll see you online.